Good morning. I am Savannah Sellers. Thank you very much for joining us on a Monday. Joe is off this morning. We are, of course, going to get started with the latest on those deadly California wildfires. Officials say the death toll, it's now reached 24, but that is expected to rise. Firefighters are bracing for resurgent Santa Ana winds, with gusts expected to reach up to 70 miles per hour, potentially fanning flames and scattering embers once again. According to CAL FIRE, more than 40,000 acres have been scorched across Los Angeles so far, with more than 12,000 structures damaged or destroyed. Many of those, of course, people's homes. In an exclusive interview with NBC News, California Governor Gavin Newsom spoke to our Jacob Soboroff about this historic nature of this disaster. In your opinion, is this or will it be the worst national disaster in the history of the United States? I think it will be in terms of just the costs associated with it. In terms of the scale and scope, we have team coverage of the wildfires in just a few moments. Meteorologist Michelle Grossman will have the latest on the winds that are fueling the fires and expect it to get worse. And we'll hear from one of the firefighters, one of the heroes on the front lines. But we're going to get started with NBC's Morgan Chesky. He's in hard-hit Altadena, California, a community that has just completely changed in the face of this tragedy. Morgan, good morning. You've been doing incredible reporting from this area since this disaster started. What is the scene like at this point there, this morning? Yeah, Savannah, a very stark scene here in the Altadena area where we have entire neighborhoods that, as you can see behind me, have been reduced to rubble. This unfortunately not the exception to the rule, and some key things to point out that have transpired over the weekend. You mentioned this ongoing firefighting effort. I think entering this weekend, firefighters had crossed their fingers that the winds would die down and allow them to make some significant progress on this fire. That's happened to a degree. We are now 27% contained here on the Eaton fire to the west of us, the Palisades fire now 11% contained. And while that's certainly encouraging progress, firefighters did tell me that the winds did not die down as much as they originally anticipated over the weekend, and the fire was still acting incredibly unpredictable at times. They had to make a very strong stand to keep it from going through a canyon that would have allowed it access to the heavily populated San Fernando Valley. So the concern right now, Savannah, is that despite the progress, those winds are expected to pick back up today, potentially into tomorrow. We know a red flag warning extending all the way to Wednesday right now. So even though we had this incredible surge of firefighting resources that have arrived really en masse over the last 72 hours or so, their work is still very much cut out for them in the days ahead here. Savannah, Morgan, as I mentioned a moment ago, the Santa Ana winds, they're expected to pick back up overnight and then last through at least Wednesday. That obviously has a major impact on fighting these fires. We're going to talk with somebody who's on the front lines in just a moment, but from what you're seeing there in Altadena and with the Eaton fires still raging, how are firefighters preparing for those conditions? Well, I think that the most clear impact that we see when those winds pick back up to a significant degree is that we really lose the assets that the airdrops have provided, or the benefits rather, because we saw videos earlier on in this firefight of the helicopters of the fixed wings that really, in some cases, couldn't even fly because it was too windy. And even if they were flying and they dropped the water, it was blown off target by those incredibly strong winds. And ground crews, of course, will put up as good a firefight as they can, but it has to be kind of a combo of firefight, particularly with a blaze as fast-moving as this one. So that's certainly top of mind for these crews. We have had a fire captain tell us that when they arrive and the winds are that strong, if there is no air support, they will look at an area where there are homes. And if the flames have already spread to certain houses, they'll have to even fall back to a street to essentially make their stand there, understanding that those homes will be overtaken in a very short amount of time. So the wind factor cannot be overstated on how big a difference it makes and how much more danger it adds to this firefight. And that is why we are clearly saying that we're not out of the woods just yet here. Savannah, absolutely. Morgan Chesky, thank you very much for your reporting. Stay safe. For more, let's bring in Brent Pasqua, CAL FIRE Battalion Chief. Chief, thank you very much for joining us. It is good to see you again. I'm sorry that it's still under these circumstances. I want to pick up right there on the winds. We know that these hurricane-level winds last week is what helped fuel these fires, really make them explode so quickly, kind of behave in ways that we're unable to be kept up with. And we know that those winds are expected to return. Walk us through how much of a concern that is when you put in. Last week, when the Palisades fire got started. Is this almost like those conditions all over again, and the potential not only for these fires to grow, but for new ones to begin? Yeah, that's correct. There's definitely a lot of potential there. So we took the last couple days to heavily attack this fire and do everything we can to knock the heat out of it with all of our crews and being able to use the air assets. We've made quite a difference here on this fire. Yeah, walk us through that progress. What were you able to do over the weekend? And maybe explain. I know there is a certain percent on both the Pacific Palisades fire as well as the Eaton fire that is contained. Maybe explain exactly what containment means, how it's good news when we hear that there is a level of containment, but it does not mean that the fires are out by any means. But tell us what you're able to do over this weekend. That's right. That number is a tricky number to describe. Sometimes the people who aren't familiar with this. So when we're sitting at now 13%, that part of the fire we are comfortable walking away with and not having anyone there and it being completely out and not reigniting in any way. So it's tough to bring that number up when we have these winds coming, that's for sure. But the crews, they were able to use their aircraft. Our ground assets. Bulldozers. We've been out there right on the front lines, right on the fire lines, if you will, trying to find any hidden heat. Yesterday, I was hard-pressed to find any smoke on this fire, but that doesn't mean it's out by any means. There's a lot of heat in the earth, in the ground, just below the surface, so firefighters have been out there the last couple days, hustling to get all the heat out so that when these winds do surface, there's no embers or hot coals that can blow over our fire lines. Can you explain that a little further, Chief? I think as people who are not familiar at all with how to fight a fire, we just think there's flames, there's any type of fire, therefore there is heat. What do you mean by take the heat out of it?
Right.
So it's very misleading when you say 13%. Even though I couldn't find any smoke yesterday on this fire, there's still a lot of heat that's hidden just below the surface. So it's our job to do what we call mopping up. We'll dig up just below the surface, put water on it, make sure it's out, make sure it's cool to the touch. And that's a lot of work. And that's what we've been doing these last 3 days. If we find a lot of heat, we'll bring in helicopters to make an airdrop. And then So the fire lines we also have painted with that fire retardant. So that's an extra layer of protection there. And then the communities nearest these fire lines, we brought in a surge of resources so that we have engines in those neighborhoods, sometimes one engine to a house. There have been heartening scenes of just this outpouring of support from the community, whether that be local restaurants feeding y'all on the front lines, people bringing donations to you, but also that other cities, other states, even other countries sending reinforcements to work alongside you all. How has it felt to receive that support? And do you have equipment, manpower? Do you have what you need? We do have what we need, and it's been amazing. I've never seen anything like it. The support we received from everyone, not only the community but other states, like you said, other countries, it's been extraordinary. And together we're going to be able to stop this fire and actually make a difference because of that support. It's been a tremendous help. Chief Brent Pasqua, I pray next week we are not having a similar conversation. We so appreciate your time, and we're thinking about you on the front lines. Thank you very much. Thank you, Savannah. We want to get you more of that exclusive interview with California Governor Gavin Newsom. He joined Meet the Press to discuss the recovery and rebuilding efforts. Here's moderator Kristen Welker. Hello there, Savannah. This week on Meet the Press, NBC's Jacob Sabroff spoke exclusively with California Governor Gavin Newsom for Meet the Press about the wildfire rebuilding efforts ahead of major events in Los Angeles. Over the course of the next several years, Los Angeles will be host to the World Cup and then the Super Bowl and then the Olympics. With this rebuilding effort needing to take place, is LA going to be ready for all of those local events? My humble position, and it's not. Just being naively optimistic, that only reinforces the imperative, moving quickly, doing in the spirit of collaboration, cooperation. President of the United States, Donald Trump, to his credit, was helpful in getting the Olympics to the United States of America to get it down here in LA. We thank him for that. This is an opportunity for him to shine, for this country to shine, for California and this community to shine. The opportunity with all of that. And all that opportunity and that pride and spirit that comes from not just hosting those 3 iconic games and venues, but also the opportunity, I think, to rebuild at the same time. And that's why we're already organizing a Marshall Plan. You can see the full interview and a lot more at meetthepress.com. You can also get more Meet the Press here on NBC News Now every weekday at 4 p.m. Kristen, thank you, and our thanks to Jacob for that exclusive. Well, for more on the situation in California, we'll also talk about across the country. Let's get a check on your morning news. Now weather with meteorologist Michelle Grossman. Big concern. Yeah, that's right. Hi there, Savannah. We have that daunting situation ahead of us once again, a little break over the weekend, but we're starting to see those winds ramp up, really ramping up later on today into Tuesday, also Wednesday. So we could see a similar situation to what we saw last week, 10 million people at risk. We have red flag warnings extending from places like Santa Clarita, Malibu, Santa Ana, Temecula, Escondido, down to Campo. We're looking at winds gusting up to 50, even 70 miles per hour. That's going to fan the flames, and it will also ignite some more fires. We're looking at humidity levels bone dry, still 8 to 15%. We have a big area of high pressure off the coast that is pumping in dry air. We're looking at those northeasterly winds. That's a dry wind, and as it reaches the ground, and kind of warms up as well now. This is new. We have a particularly dangerous situation that was issued by the LA office of the National Weather Service. Last night, this is for through Wednesday, and that's because we're looking at extremely critical fire conditions. Once again, high risk for large fires with explosive growth, just like we saw last week. And we're looking at places like Fillmore, Westlake Village, Sanford, Redondo, Malibu, also Pyramid Lake. Places like that need to be on high alert. I'm sure they already are. You need to follow your evacuation plans if you get them from your county officials. So for today, we have an extreme risk. That's where we're looking at the pink color. We also have a critical risk, the red color, and then the elevated risk is in the orange. That's going to be the same story as we go throughout tomorrow. Not much relief on Tuesday, not much relief on Wednesday. So this is what tomorrow looks like. Glendora, Santa Clarita, Thousand Oaks under an extreme risk. Once again, tomorrow we're looking at that elevated risk just north of Santa Barbara, Big Bear Lake, Riverside, places like Escondido as well. Once we're going to watch this very closely over the next several days. These are the fires that are burning the Eden fire, 27% contain the fire. She's did a really great explanation of this. Palestine's fire 13%, Hus fire better at 89%. But we're going to watch these fires, and then hopefully not see additional fires. Winds gusting right now anywhere from October 20th, 25 mph. Look what happens as we go throughout time that we're going to see these ramp up, and they're going to be sustained gusts for a longer time. So we're looking at winds gusting up to 54 miles per hour in some spots, up to 60 in others. And then as we go throughout the tomorrow, it's going to be the same story as well. Of course, that's a big story this week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We're also looking at bitterly cold temperatures, dangerous chill. As we look at the northern plains, the upper Midwest temperatures in the single digits, in some spots below zero in others. Minneapolis today, 6 degrees. That's 18 degrees below normal. Notice that chill extends all the way down to the southern plains. We're looking at Corpus Christi in the low 60s. New Orleans 55-49 in Jacksonville. Tomorrow we're going to see that cold spread back into the northeast parts of the mid-Atlantic. Once again, New York City just at the freezing mark tomorrow, below freezing in Charleston, West Virginia 25. Look at those 40s in Huntsville, Charlotte, Charleston 54, Albany 55. And we're going to say chilly throughout later part of this week as well. New York City 33 on Wednesday, 32 on Thursday, 39 on Friday. Watching the chance for some snow too. We're looking at snow falling in the Great Lakes. So we do have winter alerts along the Great Lakes to see a little bit of snow too in the interior parts of the Northeast. So the chill is there. That's going to set the stage for some snow. But of course we're going. Continue to talk about this fire threat. Absolutely. It's just so tough to see. And like I had just said with the chief, the fact that the conditions are similar to what started this and they found it in the first place is so concerning. Michelle, thank you. It's so scary. Yeah, it is. All right, we'll see you next hour. Let's get to politics now. And as expected, Special Counsel Jack Smith resigned from the Justice Department over the weekend. Smith led 2 federal investigations against President-elect Donald Trump, one into alleged attempts to overturn his 2020 election defeat, and then the other into allegations that he mishandled classified documents. We might remember this. Both cases were dropped after Mr. Trump won the recent election. That's because of a long-standing Justice Department policy not to prosecute a sitting president. However, Smith did submit his final report before resigning. NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley joins us now. Ryan, good morning. So, Smith's resignation. It was widely expected to happen ahead of President-elect's inauguration next week, but just walk us through why that is. Why would he step down?
Sure.
Well, I mean, the investigation was going to wind down before Donald Trump took office, just because they could not go forward with this prosecution with Donald Trump in office. So theoretically, this would be a situation where the special counsel would continue on and continue prosecuting a case. It wouldn't necessarily end just because there was a change in administration. But in this case, because it's the sitting president of the United States, there's this long-standing Justice Department policy that the sitting president of the United States cannot be charged, nor can he be on trial, Savannah. During the campaign, Mr. Trump had attacked Jack Smith, often by name, as our viewers might remember, saying he should be thrown out of the country. He also threatened to prosecute his opponents during the campaign.
We've heard a lot about that.
Is there any concern within the Justice Department that Smith may be a target for the president-elect's incoming DOJ leadership? Yeah, there's definitely that concern. I mean, the issue is that there's really no crime that you could credibly charge him with, right? So you have to get that past a grand jury, and you'd also have to get Justice Department employees that Donald Trump would appoint to agree to go along with that and to pretend that there was something to investigate here. So I think that that's really the hurdle that would prevent this from happening in the first place. All this took place, in D.C., so also, or most of it took place in D.C. theoretically. I guess some of it took place in Florida, but there's just not a criminal statute that we're really referring to. This is just. Or one of the things that Donald Trump throws out where he thinks, a lot of his political enemies should be thrown away in prison. So, Ryan, the big question here, those reports, where do things stand on them being released? Do we expect to see any part of them before Mr. Trump's inauguration or ever? So those reports, yes, we do expect them to be released, or at least one of them to be released, Volume 1 to be released. And that could come very quickly, honestly, because right now there is a hold-up because a Trump-appointed judge in Florida, Judge Eileen Cannon, has put this ban on releasing them even though she really didn't have any jurisdiction over the issues at hand. So there's just the question of when the Justice Department is legally allowed to release those without that hold-up from Eileen Cannon. When that hold-up drops from Eileen Cannon through whatever means, we could see those reports very quickly or report very quickly. Yesterday, we got some comments from Vice President-elect J.D. Vance about who he thinks should be pardoned from the January 6th rioters.
What is he saying?
Yeah, what was immediately clear to me is that J.D. Vance understands these cases a lot better than Donald Trump does, because it was abundantly clear that Donald Trump really didn't understand. Let's take a listen to what J.D. Vance had said. If you protested peacefully on January the 6th, and you've had Merrick Garland's Department of Justice treat you like a gang member, you should be pardoned. If you committed violence on that day, obviously you shouldn't be pardoned. And there's a little bit of a gray area there. So he's separating obviously the violence from the non-violence there. I think the question is when he's talking about, the people who are treated like gang members. Remember not that many people who are non-violent are still in prison or have even, really were given prison in the first place. A lot of the non-violent folks were just given sentences of probation if they simply walked into the Capitol building. But there are those individuals who are actually part of gangs. The Proud Boys, for example, the Oath Keepers, for example, whose cases were handled differently because they were involved in this conspiracy. And that's what ultimately resulted in longer charges. So we should see how those parties ultimately played out in just over a week here. Ryan, thank you very much. Well, This week on Capitol Hill, more than a dozen of President-elect Trump's cabinet picks are gearing up for a grilling by Senate members as confirmation hearings get underway. Among those expected to face extra scrutiny is Mr. Trump's pick for Secretary of Defense. That's Pete Hegseth. His hearing gets started tomorrow. In the host of MSNBC's Way Too Early, Ali Vitali joining us now. Getting to intro you that way, Ali. Good morning. So we know Hegseth has faced these allegations of sexual financial misconduct, alcohol abuse. Now he denies all of that. But how much of an uphill battle is he expected to face tomorrow? It is going to be a song, Savannah. We knew this from the very moment that Hegseth was nominated. Initially, there were just concerns about his managerial abilities. This is a massive organization of hundreds of thousands of people within the Department of Defense. Hegseth has never run an organization that large. He is, of course, a veteran himself. But there are questions that senators are asking. Even putting aside all of those various allegations of misconduct that you mentioned, we would already be having questions about if he was qualified for this position. So not only does he have to assuage those concerns, he will have to then make public, I imagine, clarifying his stance on whether women should be able to serve in combat. That's something that he said, much controversy around that. And then also reminding you that two of the women who sit on the Armed Services Committee that he's going to be testifying in front of, Senators Joni Ernst and Tammy Duckworth, are combat veterans themselves. I imagine they have a lot of thoughts that we're going to hear about on his past comments there. And then that's nothing to say of the allegations of misuse of alcohol, abuse of funds when he was running a veterans organization, and then the sexual assault allegation out of California. Of course, charges were not brought there, but many people have read that report, myself included, many members on the Hill. A lot of questions that they're going to be asking. Ali, in addition to all that information, we do know two leading members of the Senate Arms Committee, they got HEC's FBI background check. What do we know about that? And will other senators have a chance to see the report before the hearing? There's a true it's coming late in the game here at this point. We know that the background check was completed at the end of last week, that the two top members of the committee have been able to get their hands on it, and they have been able to read it. But Democrats specifically have two concerns. One, the fact that they haven't seen it yet, they would very much like to. But two, the level of comprehensiveness within that background check. We listed and detailed some of the allegations against Hegseth. I know Democratic senators that I've spoken to think there might be more there on a variety of those allegations. So they want to pull on those threads. They were hoping that the FBI background check would be a way for them to do that, to be able to get more information before the confirmation hearings. Regardless, they would just like to see what's in this report. At this point, it's not clear that they'll be able to do that. But let me be clear, it's not just Democrats who would like to see it. Republican senators have been clear that this is going to be a key part of the way they figure out if they can get to yes on Hegseth, and if there's things in the background check that either assuage their concerns or... And, Ali, what other confirmation hearings are we keeping an eye out for? There is a lot going on this week. Truly buckle in for the start of confirmation battle season, because you start off with Hegseth. Arguably, that's one of the most contentious. There have not yet been hearings scheduled officially for some of the other contentious picks you'll see on the screen. The list of hearings does not at this point include Tulsi Gabbard or RFK Jr., the HHS Secretary nominee. Those are going to be two of the more controversial ones, not yet scheduled. We're also looking for. But take a look at January the 15th on Wednesday. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, is going to start day one of her hearing. A lot of eyeballs going to be on that one. And then Secretary or would-be Secretary of State Marco Rubio, now Senator of Florida, he is going to be one of the less controversial ones. And it'll give you a real contrast of what it looks like to be murdered in controversy to face the full onslaught of Democratic skepticism and questioning versus Rubio, who is generally well-liked and bipartisan in fashion. Many of the senators who I've spoken to who are going to be part of that confirmation hearing feel he's prepared, of course, because of the Senate Intel Committee that he's served on, the past work that he has done. This is one that's likely to cruise through. But again, it's going to provide a real contrast. Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.